of Zone Coverage. I'm Cody Schoeler here with Ryan Root, as always, ready to talk about some Week 7 NFL action going on this weekend. We will dive straight into the news ahead of this week, and not a lot, honestly, as I'm going through, not a lot of notable stuff to write down, so we're going to go a little obscure, but we're going to start out with probably the biggest kind of just news in general to come out of this week, and it has to do with the game tonight, the Browns and the Broncos. But Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are both ruled out. Baker Mayfield is also out. Odell, I think, is still playing if he's not like 50-50. I know he's always banged up. Faces uphill battle to play in Week 7, so who knows about him. But they are getting Jarvis Landry back, so, that sacrificing all of them to get him back. But, I mean, we'll loop them all in together, but Hunt, Chubb, Mayfield out, Landry back. What do you make of, everything that's happening with them right now?
Well, considering they're a run-first team, their first two rushing options are no longer for this game, which I'm looking for.
Wait, I want to chime in and say a thing. I know last week, this kind of goes under the radar, but last week they were missing both of their offensive tackles, Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin. I'm trying to see if they are out again. So that looks like they're both questionable. Yeah, so that's another thing since they were out last week. So, yeah, running team, if they're missing their tackles as well, that's an even bigger hit. Sorry for the interruption there. I'll let you get back to it.
Well, I'm just looking at the roster to see who is the next, running option in terms of stats for the Cleveland. I mean, the top two rushers are obviously Chubb and Kareem Hunt. It looks like we lost Cody on the stream there. We'll probably get him back here in a second. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt being the top two rushers. And then number 3, of course, is Baker Mayfield. Number 4 is actually Odell Beckham. And then we have a guy named, let's see here, D'Ernest Johnson is the next running back who has any rushing stats whatsoever. So obviously they're going to be quite battered up on offense. Going up against a team like Denver tonight, they're not going to be tested too much considering all of Denver's wins have come up against, at the time, winless teams. So it's going to affect them, a little bit, obviously, but not too much, I don't think, again, since they're not playing a premier team. But we have Cody back here. Basically just saying, the injuries are going to affect them a lot, don't get me wrong. But going up against Denver, it could be a lot worse, right?
Yeah. My Wi-Fi decided to boot me out. I came back in. It didn't work, so I had to do it twice. But, yeah, I'm sure you hit on it. But, I mean, the Browns, probably the worst timing for all these injuries is a short week. Having obviously Chubb was out beforehand, but Hunt and Mayfield, Mayfield was dealing with an injury, but getting banged up on Sunday when you're playing on a Thursday is always, the worst possible timing. Mayfield's playing through an injury. Hunt's now on the IR. So, this might be one of those weeks where obviously you go out there and compete, but you're going to be playing a bunch of backups. This might be one that you just kind of eat, in a way to kind of get better for the next week. I'm not sure when their bye is, and hopefully that's soon for them.
Their bye is week 13.
So, nope, not soon for them. That kind of sucks.
Baltimore, then they have the bye, and then they play Baltimore again right afterwards, which that's pretty brutal.
Yeah, so that just sucks. But, I mean, Landry's getting back, so that, that's an option. He will be a good kind of security blanket for, Case Keenum, who will be their starter. But, yeah, I mean, it just kind of sucks. The Browns were a team that had high expectations and were looking really good. Their only 2 losses are to 2 of the better teams. Or I guess, 3 losses now, but they're all 2, teams that probably will make the playoffs. So, it does suck, but it's just kind of the way it is. But, hopefully, the goal is always to just be as healthy as you can, by the end of the season when it Not that it doesn't matter now, but that's always a goal when you're a team with aspirations such as them.
And Case Keenum playing against his last team before Cleveland, I believe, was Denver. Maybe he was somewhere else beforehand.
With him. He's been.
But going up against his former team, I guess there's some storyline there.
I mean, he's played against a lot of former teams at this point, probably.
Yeah, so I mean, for a Thursday night primetime game, I wish we could have actually seen a Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb performance, but basically going to be the Teddy Bridgewater and Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy show, which,
Jerry Jeudy, I don't think he's coming back. I think he's still like a 50-50 shot, even so on their side of the ball. So we'll see. And then Case Keenum, last year was with Cleveland. The year before that with Washington. The year before that, 2018, he was in Denver. So it's been a while, but it is a former team. He was brought in to be the starter there, and I think got supplanted by Trevor Siemian. So yeah, obviously a little bit of familiarity there. I want to move on to we'll go to a few player notes. I'm gonna just throw them all at you. You can react to whatever you find most interesting. Michael Thomas is eligible to return from the PUP list. Doesn't seem like he will return this week. They're targeting the next week or the week after that, but he is now eligible to return, so hopefully he gets on the field soon. Dallas Goedert activated off the COVID list. Obviously, the Eagles traded Zach Ertz last week, so he certainly needs to step up there. And then Dawson Knox undergoing hand surgery this week. Obviously, the Bills are on a bye, so that gives him a week to get ready. But pick one, which one of those means the most to you if you want to hit on whatever you think is relevant. They're not really the most relevant kind of news stories there.
Right. So, I mean, Dawson Knox has been playing great lately. So, I mean, there's probably the most important, current player who has been playing. But in terms of, players who haven't been playing, obviously Michael Thomas is interesting considering he didn't play at all last year. And he
played, I think he played at the start.
Or, yeah, he played at the start.
Then injury.
And then he got
injured. Yeah, it was a weird year.
He's a bit of a problem child, obviously. And once he comes back full force for a Saints team that, I mean, the last time he's playing, considerable football with this team, Drew Brees was throwing the ball, not Jameis Winston, right? And Alvin Kamara is still there on the team, but they don't have Emmanuel Sanders to feed off anymore. And obviously Taysom Hill is one of the premier receivers in that offense. But now you have Michael Thomas coming back in, which a lot of people like to call slant boy, right? So we'll see if he lives up to his legacy from the past. But
I mean,
that was after the game. I mean, who knows?
That was a Drew Brees thing. I mean, Drew Brees couldn't throw the ball down the field, so I think Michael Thomas ran a bunch of slants. I think when he gets back, if he is healthy, I think he's going to be, really good because Jameis Winston is not afraid to chuck the ball down the field. Michael Thomas is, certainly has the potential to be one of the best receivers. I mean, 2 years ago he set the season reception record. So it'll just be what kind of headspace he's in. Obviously, health if he's 100% healthy. But there is a huge gap for a pass catcher there in New Orleans. So that's something to watch. And then Dawson Knox, I mean, just quickly, it's not really much until it comes down to if he misses the game or not. Obviously, it's good timing with the bye week. That certainly played into it. But, next week we'll probably hit on again. If he is expected to miss a game, then that's something to monitor. But right now, maybe a little bit of worry, but nothing huge. And then the last thing I want to hit on, Marlon Mack, who was the starter, last year for the Colts. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is the guy now. He's emerging as a trade option. The 4 teams I see listed for him were Kansas City, Carolina, San Francisco, and New Orleans. So, trade deadline is around 2 weeks away. There's not as much movement as there is in other sports in the NFL, but there certainly can be some notable pieces on the move. Marlon Mack seems almost a guarantee to be one of them.
I mean, in terms of the teams that he's been in discussions with, I'd say probably the most intriguing ones are probably San Fran or Kansas City. Kansas City, I don't think, typically really needs them all that much. But San Fran, I mean, Mostert was their top back, and then obviously Elijah Mitchell came in. He got hurt, the rookie running back there. But I feel like Marlon Mack has the potential to have some playing time in San Fran. But that's what I kind of like about the trade deadline in the NFL is you don't get too much crazy stuff that happens. Nothing that's really, season changing or anything like you would in the NBA, for example. So it could be a potentially good addition for San Fran, I imagine. But in terms of these other teams, I think they're looking for depth above all else.
Yeah, I think I like New Orleans as the best one out of those. I mean, this is a team that they have Alvin Kamara, and they obviously use him incredibly well, but they also had used Latavius Murray very well over the past few years, and they let him go. They went with Tony Jones as a backup. So this is a team that likes to use two running backs, have Alvin Kamara as the guy who plays all over the field, and then have a backup that they can bring in to, pound the rock. And if Kamara misses time, which happens to a lot of running backs, you've got a reliable backup. And Marlon Mack, last time he was a starter, rushed for over 1,000 yards. So he's got the potential to be, a really solid NFL running back. So, in Kansas City and Carolina, those are teams that, they've got their guys that are injured. Who knows how long they'll be out. So it's more of a stopgap type thing. And plus, I like Darrell Williams and Chuba Hubbard kind of filling in. San Francisco, I mean, I think they've just got a lot of guys. They should probably figure it out in-house, especially if this isn't going to be a huge contending year. Let Trey Sermon or Elijah Mitchell be the guy. So I would say New Orleans, and who knows with injuries, somebody else could emerge. So that's, who knows who else will be a trade candidate. Hopefully, as we've seen, Zach Ertz already get moved. We'll see next week. We might have a little bit more clarity on that, but, it's certainly something to watch. But we're going to get into the Fantasy 5, even though it really goes a little bit longer than that, but it's just catchy. So if you've got fantasy questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We will try to help you out as best as we can. No guarantees we will get it right because we called not to start Kirk Cousins last week. But, you win some, you lose some. So I want to start it off with your start of the week, your player you are most confident in this week.
Well, I mean, I feel like this is pretty obvious, but in terms of not only the storyline that backs this up, but just with how well he's been playing and him getting the opportunity to play his former team, Matt Stafford against Detroit is going to be a show. I mean, if this was in Detroit, then it would have been even better, right? But we also saw Tom Brady go back to New England and not play incredibly well. But this is the Lions we're talking about here.
Yeah, the Patriots are not the Lions.
So a top 5 team in the league, the LA Rams going up against a winless Detroit team, the only winless team left in the league. This is just bound to he's bound to get at least 20 points, right? I would assume over 300 yards, probably 3 touchdowns. Like it's going to be a clinic for the most part, and I don't think Sean McVay is probably going to do anything too drastic against a team like Detroit, but Detroit may very well recognize that and, throw some curveballs at them as well to keep in the game. But this is going to be a Matt Stafford clinic. That's probably, my favorite start of the week. If anybody's got Matt Stafford, he's going to put on a show for his former team.
Well, hopefully, because I'm playing Matt Stafford against you this week. So I hope your words. But yeah, I mean, the only thing that worries me there is, he's had subpar games in good LA games. I think, it's going to come down to touchdowns. If, Darrell Henderson runs a few in early and then they're not really pushing the pedal late, it could be, a little underwhelming. But, I mean, he threw for 4 touchdowns last week. He certainly has that touchdown potential. I like, obviously, the matchup there. One that I really like is kind of a 2 or 3 for 1 is I like the Atlanta Falcons against the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins defense has been pretty bad recently. They're now up there as one of the worst. And I mean, they gave up 16 points in week 1, and they've given up like 160 since then. So they're not doing pretty good. And Atlanta maybe seemed to figure something out. We saw Kyle Pitts have his best game of his young career 2 weeks ago. Obviously, they had the bye last week. Matt Ryan, he's now got 8 touchdowns and no interceptions his last 3 games. So, he had a slow start, but maybe he's figuring something something out. Hopefully that applies to Calvin Ridley, and they can start to get their young stud receiver in the mix. But this could be something that I really like what Atlanta can do against a Miami team that I think is really struggling.
Yeah, considering Miami has a defensive coach like Brian Flores, and they're just not performing well at all, is really just shocking. I mean, yeah, Kyle Pitts obviously had a career game last week, and I'd love to see if he could have multiple games like that for the rest of the season, considering he's on one of my fantasy teams. But I'm not entirely sure on Miami quite yet, but obviously the defense has just been consistently bad this entire season. If I had to think about another play that I'm actually kind of a fan of, is I think DJ Moore might be kind of a sneaky pick for people to start this week, going up against the Giants. I know a lot of people will talk down on Sam Darnold a good amount, but I think this Carolina offense is still quite a bit underrated. I don't think McCaffrey is playing this weekend still.
No, they put him on the IR, so he'll be out.
Right, so obviously going to have to relate to the pass, and yes, you might get a Sam Darnold 1 yard line rush touchdown that ruins your points, but DJ Moore being the premier, or at least one of the premier receivers for that Carolina offense, going up against a dismal New York Giants defense. I consider that to be somewhat of an under radar play, because I think a lot of people are counting Carolina out a little soon. But obviously, I've been a big Carolina fan for the beginning of this season. So,
well, they kind of are out. So that's all I have to say about that. Another guy, I mean, you're obviously starting him if you've got him, but I think Alvin Kamara is going to have a big week this week. I mean, we've seen the Seattle defense just, help right the ship of a lot of running backs. Obviously, Derrick Henry struggled in week 1. Then he went off in week 2. Najee Harris just had, his best game of the season last week. Kamara, he's going to get rushing attempts. He's going to get passing attempts or, receiving attempts. He's just going to be involved in that game. And he's been really solid, but he, hasn't had a huge game necessarily. I think he's starting to pick up as they figure out that offense with Jameis Winston. So, I think he's another guy that, like I said, Najee Harris top 5 last week. I barely missed it. And then, think Kamara is going to do a similar thing. And then I like Deebo Samuel for the 49ers going up against the Colts. The Colts have given up the second most passing touchdowns in the league. Deebo Samuel has certainly taken over the number 1 really offensive weapon on that team. Jimmy Garoppolo, I believe, might be back. I know, he's certainly healthy. It now comes down to whether Trey Lance is a starter or not. And then, George Kittle's on IR. Brandon Ayuk is struggling. Deebo Samuel is a guy they like to get involved. And so I think, he's for sure going to get at least 1 touchdown, and that'll help inflate his fantasy value.
I really hope Jimmy G doesn't come back. I love watching Trey Lance play so much, and I just don't think Jimmy G has that high of a ceiling whatsoever. I don't think you could really count on Jimmy G to be a consistent fantasy option at quarterback. Then again, you can't really trust a lot of quarterbacks to really exceed like the 30-point mark, like Josh Allen and Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson. But if I had to, don't want to throw a kicker or a defense out there. I'd like to be a little bit more, entertaining than that, I guess. If I could pick a defense, because I do think defense, somewhat could be like a 15, 20-point performance depending on who you start and depending on who they play. Obviously, you got Tampa Bay going against Chicago is going to be. Tampa Bay's defense is not remotely the same as last year, but Justin Fields going up against a premier team, there's just such a small chance that he's going to have a good game. There's probably going to be at least one or two turnovers in that game. So I'd imagine Tampa Bay would be a good defensive start this week. And if I could pick, to throw another defense out there, just because I will say whenever I play fantasy, I pay, probably a little too much attention to defense as the normal person does, because at the end of the day, it's probably just 7 or 8 points. But it's kind of tough, but San Fran going against Indy, I think could have good potential because I'm not high on Indianapolis whatsoever. But in terms of defense, I could give you those suggestions. I try to switch it up a little bit and give some weird ones.
The only thing I'll say about that Tampa Bay matchup is I like Darnell Mooney for the Bears in that one. He's kind of emerging as Fields' kind of go-to target as Allen Robinson has struggled, and the Tampa Bay defense is vulnerable to the pass. I still think, they get a few sacks, maybe a few picks, which certainly is not out of the equation. They'll have a great day. But, I think Mooney might be I think he'll be the leading receiver on the Bears. Who knows what that amounts to. Hopefully he gets a touchdown. But we can start moving into the previews of these games as we kind of need to run through these. We've only got, 13 games this week as Buffalo, Dallas, Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, and the Los Angeles Chargers are all on a bye. So this is certainly the tough fantasy week with a lot of good teams such as, Baltimore, Dallas. Chargers have a lot of fantasy options, so you might be scrambling to fill in some starts. So, a guy like Darnell Mooney might be a guy you want to slide in for Keenan Allen, but we will get into those. I know we can start with the Thursday night football matchup that we've hit on just a little bit with Denver and Cleveland. Obviously, Cleveland, all those injuries, they're still a 1.5 point favorite at home.
I've been kind of back and forth on this game, considering that I think, both these teams full for, at 100% healthy. This would be Cleveland's game, 9 times out of 10, I imagine. But considering the amount of injuries Cleveland has and how, kind of under the radar Teddy Bridgewater is going with his offense, I think I'm taking the Broncos to win this game, because I think the narrative is going to keep following them the rest of the season, where it's like, oh, the Broncos have 7 or 8 wins or whatever they're going to end up getting, and the majority of those wins are going to be against teams that are extremely lackluster or extremely banged up, like this Cleveland team. So I can imagine that narrative keeps following this Denver team, but nevertheless, I think they will pull an upset, if you want to call it an upset, over Cleveland. Cleveland, I see here as a 2-point favorite. I don't know about on your end.
Got them 1.5. I agree. Sure, it's an upset, but I just, I'm not going to trust Case Keenum if he was filling in for, Seattle or, a team with weapons, I'd be a little more, Geno Smith, it's why there was a little bit of confidence in him because he had weapons, but Case Keenum doesn't have a lot of weapons. He will have Jarvis Landry and Donovan Peoples-Jones and, Austin Hooper and David Njoku, not a lot going on for him. He doesn't even have the backs to rely on. They're throwing out Dearness Johnson as their starting running back with a little bit of Demetric Felton, to go along with that. It's going to be a rough time for that offense. So I think they'll struggle. And then Denver's offense, I think, is good enough to get a few points, enough points to win. I think it'll be a close game. Nobody's scoring a bunch, but I like Denver as, they're losing to teams that are probably better than them. They're beating teams that they are better than, but they've been pretty solid. Right.
Absolutely. I think Denver will go above 400 or 500 and continually put pressure on the AFC West division. But we have Washington going on the road to Green Bay. Not much to think on Washington's part here. I see Green Bay as an 8-point favorite here. I would take Green Bay to win. I'd take Washington to cover. I don't think it'll be more than 8 points of the victory. I think it'll be a little bit closer. But Green Bay wins this game pretty easily, but I don't think it's going to be more than an 8-point victory for them.
I mean, Washington is just kind of this team that you can't really trust anymore. That defense is, now pretty freaking bad. And 8 points, they've lost to the Saints, Chiefs, Bills, all by 8 points. And I would put the Packers up in that echelon. I think, Rodgers is just going to go off. Devontae Adams, is going to have one of his games. He'll probably get, 15, 16 fantasy points without a touchdown. Throw that in. He'll break 20. But I like what Green Bay is doing. I think the defense is going to give them enough problems, and I just don't trust Washington's defense at any point to stop a team, like that. We even saw last week with Kansas City, even giving them a few chances with some turnovers. Washington just wasn't able to do much. Antonio Gibson's a little banged up. We'll see if he plays, but yeah, I mean, Green Bay is just, other than that week 1 stumble, they're just, kind of rolling through a bunch of teams, and they're struggling a bit, but they won't struggle with a team like Washington. I'm going Green Bay, to win and to cover.
All righty, we got Kansas City going on the road to Tennessee. The 4-2 Titans hosting Kansas City after a just like kind of jaw-dropping victory over Buffalo on Monday, that it came down to the goal line like that. But got to give a little bit credit to Tennessee, although the Chiefs are a 5.5-point favorite that I see here, even though they're on the road. I think this might be the pivotal game for Kansas City to show to everybody, hey, we're back on the saddle again. Tennessee, I wouldn't consider Tennessee to be probably a top 10 team at the end of the day. I think, they're playing in a very terrible division, and Derrick Henry is running his butt off. But outside of Derrick Henry, there's not a lot of consistency. That being said, I don't think they're a terrible team. I think if you had to rank all the teams, they'd be at 11 or 12. But Kansas City, this is the game for them to get back on top. And I'm actually suspecting a Kansas City win here, and I'll take Kansas City to cover. I think Patty Mahomes he'll put on somewhat of a, average performance for him, but by average performance, I'm saying, 300+ yards, multiple touchdowns. This will be a Kansas City win on the road.
I mean, Tennessee just went out and beat Buffalo, so to say that
did they beat Buffalo, or did Josh Allen slip? That's all I'm going to ask.
They beat Buffalo.
Josh Allen slipped, but
at the end of the day, it wasn't. So that's kind of what it comes down to. They're 4-2. I mean, their losses? Arizona, who week 1 it looked a little suspect, but now Arizona is reeling them off, and then I can't remember their other one per se. But they're playing solid. Derrick Henry is going to have no issues running.
Don't get me wrong. He's gonna destroy.
He's averaging 130 yards a game. He's on pace still to break the single season rushing record.
Their second loss.
Tennessee is playing surprising. Oh yeah, so yeah, that one was bad, but a lot of injuries going on in that one. If I remember too, you're gonna drop one. But Kansas City, I mean, at this point, I think we've been giving them the benefit of the doubt for a little bit too long. I still think they are good, but the defense is becoming a legitimate issue to one where if they're against another playoff caliber team, then I'm going to pick the other team at this point. So that's what I'm going to do with Tennessee here, and I like, especially as an underdog. I mean, Derrick Henry is just going to keep them in this game, by himself.
This might be one of the most entertaining games of this weekend, and this weekend is not full of a ton of entertaining games. But
I'm willing to do a fun little wager right here if you're down for it. But Derrick Henry has more fantasy points than Patrick Mahomes.
I'll take you up on it.
Because I was looking through this weekend, and Derrick Henry actually has the most fantasy points in the league.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Which is really, usually it's quarterbacks, but the fact that he's up there is really impressive. And you're just unable to stop him right now. 76-yard run against Buffalo, easy. It's just incredible what he's doing, and a defense like Kansas City is not going to stop him.
Oh no, but Patty Holmes is going to hit him right back.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. We got Atlanta on the road playing Miami, and they just battle the Titans right there on the road in Miami. So if Atlanta comes in as a 2.5 favorite here, I'll take Atlanta to win, Atlanta to cover. I don't think there's much to say on Miami's part, really, because they're just a train wreck right now. I mean, 1-5 with kind of forgettable win over the Patriots, right?
Yeah,
That's the only
victory.
The only high point that they had this season. But with no Tua and a very, very lackluster defense,
Tua's still there. He played last week.
But did he play last week, or was it
he did.
Set?
No, he played last week.
Oh, okay. Well, now that Tua's there, then they're definitely not going to win. So Atlanta will easily win this game, although I never want to put too much faith in Atlanta other than when Younghoe Koo wins me a wager a couple weeks ago. But Atlanta wins this game. If Tua's in or out, does not affect this team.
Hey, he played good. He played good last week, so it was not on him.
Who did they play?
They played Jacksonville, but he played good.
I'm glad he played good. And they also lost to Jacksonville, too. They allowed Jacksonville to win their first game.
Oh, yeah. No, Miami is one of the worst teams in the NFL right now. They're playing absolutely terribly. They're starting to talk about trading for Deshaun Watson. I mean, it's just not a good year for them. There's a lot of potential with them based on last year, but yeah, not confident in them at all. I mean, I talked earlier about how I think Matt Ryan and that offense is going to have a very good game against Miami. I mean, Atlanta isn't great either, but they're at least, I believe, trending upward, whereas I don't feel the same way about them, about the Dolphins. I mean, Atlanta, they were on a bye last week, but the week before they beat the Jets, close against Washington, and then they beat the Giants. So 2 of their last 3, and then this is another team that I think they are better than and more talented than. So I think that they'll win. And yeah, Matt Ryan, Kyle Pitts, hopefully Calvin Ridley, big games kind of all around. I think 2.5. I mean, they might, triple that.
Very much so. I would take Atlanta to cover all day. We got the Jets going on the road to New England to play the Patriots. Patriots is a 7-point favorite. It's the battle of Mac Jones and Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson is going to continually go out there and look like a 60 overall NFL street player, and Mac Jones is going to come out there and play some pretty boring football as usual. But this will be a New England win because I don't see how the Jets can go on the road to play in a stadium that they are historically awful in. And Bill Belichick is not going to lose a game to the Jets, even though he knows this is most likely not a playoff season for the Patriots yet again. Mac Jones, I don't think he's going to have a stellar game per se because he hasn't had a truly recognizable or notable performance other than when they played Tampa Bay, and that wasn't even a win. I mean, I think Mac Jones will still have kind of a pretty average performance, but New York's going to go on the road, and it's just going to be a real poor road trip for them, obviously. But I'll take New England to win.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this before already. Week 2, Patriots won 25-6. That was the Zach Wilson 4 interception game. And yeah, Zach Wilson, he's showing flashes of his potential. I mean, he's on one of the worst teams in the NFL with not a lot of guys around him. Terrible line, not great running back. He's got Corey Davis, but there's not a lot going on for him. So, he's going to go out there and he's going to compete. But, I don't expect much from them. I think this was at 5.5. The last time they played, it's bumped up a little bit. So, New England is looking good. They hung in there with Tampa Bay. They hung in there with Dallas, who was one of the better teams. So, New England will do this pretty easily. Bill Belichick does not lose to rookie quarterbacks, especially at home. Simple as that.
No. We got Carolina going on the road to play the Giants in MetLife Stadium. Carolina is a 3-point favorite. You already know what I'm going to say, so unless you want to defend the Giants, go right ahead.
I do, because Carolina has not done anything good since week 3 of the season. They
are on a 3-game losing streak, don't get me wrong, but this is the Giants we're talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
you want to think about what you're picking here, or
I'm picking New York because I don't believe in Carolina that much. I mean, it's just.
I never said they were a playoff team, but it's the Giants, for God's sakes.
Yeah. Hey, the Giants can be scrappy at times. I have that little faith in the Panthers. I refuse to pick them.
We were calling them scrappy. I think you should drop the S there, but
Hey, they also
no
play
way.
crappy, but against a team
I will
like
tell you what, we're going to make this
Panthers,
interesting. This is my lock. Carolina's my lock to beat New York. I didn't think I'd have to do it, but I have to do it. This is going to be a win for
yeah,
Carolina. We'll break the losing streak here.
yeah, it might be, but Sam Darnold, I think, is reverting back to, the Sam Darnold he was at USC, the Sam Darnold he was at New York, and I think those first 3 games was a bit of a fluke there, and I think he got a lot of people overhyped on him, and yeah, I'm just not expecting much. Daniel Jones, on the other hand, not anything even more special, but why not roll with my guy? I've got to start him this week because Baker Mayfield's out, so let's roll.
All right. We got Cincinnati going on the road to play Baltimore. Also, one of probably the most interesting games of the weekend. Cincinnati's just a very strange team to me because I don't know what to really think of them. I mean, being 4-2 at this stage, like they could very well finish the rest of the season 4-13. But being 4-2 with impressive games and impressive wins and even impressive losses, playing Baltimore though is where Joe Burrow's. I can't picture the Joe Burrow Jamar Chase connection to be that stellar against a defense like Baltimore's. I mean, Lamar is obviously going to be out there running for his life and making plays and making fantasy owners very happy, but I can't see Cincinnati doing anything to overcome the spread for the Ravens, which I see 6.5 point favorites for Baltimore. I think Baltimore wins. I don't think they cover. I think Cincinnati will cover, but Baltimore will win. Cincinnati will come to 4-3, but I still don't think we'll see the end of Cincinnati, even though they lose this game.
Yeah. Just want to address the chat real quick. Max giving us a bit of a yo. Thanks for tuning in, Max. If you've got a question, I know we hit our fantasy stuff earlier. Drop it in the chat. Anybody else, we'll certainly answer that. Chime in on whether you agree with us on any of these picks. Go ahead. But I think Cincinnati is the type of team that they've reached that point where they give teams like Baltimore trouble. They did it to Green Bay. They've even beaten some teams. And although Baltimore, I think, they are one of my favorite teams this year. I think they are, a Super Bowl contender for sure. I think this might be a bit of a letdown game. I mean, because it seems too easy that Baltimore just killed the Chargers. Now they're going against the Bengals. This is easy. I like Cincinnati to cover. I'm going to take Cincinnati to win even. It's one of those things where Baltimore, they're not going to win every game. They lost one, but they're not going to go 16-1. They're going to drop games from here, here and there. And I think, they've played 2, tough games in a row. The week before was if I can't remember, it was another good game that they were in a shootout. It was the come from behind win against Indianapolis. Then they go and they handle the Chargers. I think they're riding a bit of a high. I think that comes crashing down a little bit. I think Cincinnati might just eke one out. And I mean, Baltimore's giving up the 8th most passing yards. So it's not like this defense is, anything crazy. We'll see a Jamar Chase deep, reception at some point, probably for a touchdown. And we'll see what Lamar can do. But the Cincinnati defense is a little stingy. I was expecting to see them much higher up on this list. I am trying to find where they are exactly, but they're not in the top half. It's not scrolling down, so I'll get that if I can. But yeah, I'll take Cincinnati to pull off a bit of an upset.
It could happen. I wouldn't count Cincinnati completely out of this game. I think it could happen. We have Philadelphia going to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. The Raiders are a 3-point favorite over the Eagles. Would like to see that number be a little higher for a Raiders spread, but I understand why it's at there. Eagles are a slightly sneaky team, right? But the Raiders obviously are still trying to compete in that division. That's really going to be the number one factor in every single one of these games for AFC West teams, is just keeping their feet on the gas pedal. So, Raiders are going to go out there and they're going to put a ton of their effort towards taking down this Philadelphia defense that's been strangely over average, right? I say Raiders win this game. Raiders cover. I think 3 points is awfully small. So Raiders could easily, win by 4 even if it was a 28-24 game, right? So I would take Raiders to win, Raiders to cover. Jalen Hurts, he's been having little flashes here and there, but it's really going to take him a while to get anything sort of going. So I'll take the Raiders to win and to cover.
That's what I had too, but now I'm trying to decide if I want to change it up. Obviously, they played incredibly well last week with, kind of their they lost John Gruden, who resigned. They kind of rallied around that. And so I'm trying to figure out if that's going to wear off or not. I will disagree for the sake of disagreeing. I think this is a game that Philadelphia might be able to steal. So I'll take Philly. Like I said, that defense.
The only wins Philly has here is against Atlanta and Carolina. When they go up against potential playoff teams, you have San Fran, Dallas, Kansas City, and Tampa Bay all defeating Philadelphia. So, when Philadelphia goes up against teams that are over 500,
yeah, but
potential playoff.
The Raiders aren't in that same category as really the rest of these. Like, I'm not putting the Raiders in the same category as the Bucks or the Cowboys, So,
no, but they're in between
Chiefs,
San Fran and Dallas, so I can't see them defeating, a San Fran or a Dallas right now. Maybe they could beat a San Fran, but Dallas would absolutely roll over Philadelphia right now again. But the Raiders just have obviously a good thing going on offense with Derek Carr finally clicking a little bit with Henry Ruggs and obviously Darren Waller. The run game has been pretty below average, but Philadelphia, they're not over a 5-win team. Although they have just this little potential every week, they're not above a 5-win team. I just don't see it.
Over a 5-win team? there's 17 games. What, they've got 2 wins? I'll give you 4 more right now.
Okay.
Lions,
Detroit, Jets.
I'll give you Lions, and then Jets, and then they've got 4 games against the Giants in Washington. They'll take 2 of those. Those are 4 games right there. And there's the Saints
how
and
high
Broncos.
You are on the Giants. Maybe they'll lose both of those games. So
no, they'll take one. Teams like that split, especially in division. Teams split a lot. I think that they could sneak one out right here. They're at home, right? Where is this game? No, Vegas is at home. So really, they're viewing this as a pretty even game. Philly's got a decent defense. Jalen Hurts, when they're using him right, they're figuring out what to do with him. And, Vegas plays a lot of these kind of close, games and come from behind games. It's not going to last all the time. You're not going to win 10 games doing that. So I don't think they have the potential to go out there and really blow a team, that's solid like the Eagles out. So I'm gonna go with Philadelphia.
Well, we'll look at a pretty, gimme game here. We got Detroit on the road to play the Rams. Obviously, I keep putting, a little bit of my heart towards Detroit here. But this is essentially Matt Stafford's family reunion at his new house, right? So this will definitely be a Rams win. I see a 16.5-point favorite over Detroit. I'll just take Detroit to cover just for the hell of it because I think 16.5 is immense. This isn't Alabama going up against some D2 school.
That's what I was thinking, but the Bengals just beat them by 23.
But guaranteeing a 16.5-point victory,
but by the Rams, one of the best teams in the league against the worst team in the league. The Rams just beat the Giants by 27 points. So, I mean, they certainly have the capability to do that. I mean, so yeah, I mean, I'm going to take LA. Obviously, I'm going to take them to cover because good teams beat bad teams by a lot of points. Detroit can be scrappy at times, but and I don't. This isn't really like a Matthew Stafford revenge game or anything. He's glad to be out of there. Thankful time there. I mean, it's a different coach. It's a lot of different players. It's more of a Jared Goff revenge game, but Jared Goff's not getting revenge. I mean, I think Aaron Donald's going to be excited to hit him for the first time. Jalen Ramsey might. Well, Jared Goff should be the first one to know to not even throw the ball near Jalen Ramsey. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I just.
Well, if anything, he's practiced against this defense quite a bit. So, I mean.
So what?
That's a factor to throw in there. I can't see an over 16.5 point victory for a guy who has played this defense however many times during practice.
All right. This defense has also played against him. They know all his tendencies. It works both ways. I mean, they know how to read him better than any other quarterback in the league. So, let's play this both ways. So, yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, what the last one of the we disagreed on this a few weeks ago, Buffalo and Houston, and we saw how that played out. I mean, sure it happens, but the safer bet is to go with the good team.
For sure. We have Houston going on the road to Arizona.
That's another one of these.
Am I still connected on the call? Is my face just frozen?
Yeah, I can. Oh, I'm hearing you.
Okay. I'll just keep going here. So we got Houston going to Arizona. Arizona's going to go to 7-0. I think there's nothing you could really say on Houston's part here. It's at home in Arizona. It's going to be a freaking party there. This is just going to be a Kyler Murray show. Arizona's going to go to 7-0. We'll see if they reach the 11-0 spot that Pittsburgh reached last year. But Arizona is just going to keep it going here. I can't see why they would drop this game.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona, they will lose, and then, they won't get to 10-0. They'll lose before that for sure. But this is not going to be one of them. Houston is, just a pitiful team. And, similar to LA, Detroit kind of matchup. I mean, this one I'm a little bit more confident in Houston covering. I'm still not picking it, but if I had to pick one of the two, I'd pick them just because I think Arizona's not going to be as motivated to, keep their foot on the gas there. And Houston might be a little bit more competitive. We'll see, but I'm still going to pick Arizona. I mean, weird to think that, they're going to have to beat a team by like 20 to cover. But, yeah, I'm not confident in this Houston team at all, and Arizona is rolling.
And a 17-point favorite for Arizona, again, I think I would take Houston to cover. I just feel like 17 points is a lot, especially for the NFL. It's not, impossible, don't get me wrong, but, to guarantee that on a betting standpoint, I can't put 17 points in Arizona's.
Arizona beat LA by 17 points. They beat the Rams by 17 points. Just going to throw that out there.
Well, what was the over-under on that?
LA.
The Rams were easily the favorite. So
yeah, it's like 4.5. That's what I'm saying. They beat the Rams by 17, so you don't think they'll beat Houston by 17? I could see a backdoor cover, sneaking this one out, but it'll be hovering around that mark for much of the game.
So we have Chicago going to Tampa Bay on the road. I spoke about this a little bit in the Fantasy 5, how I think Tampa Bay's defense is going to just roll over Justin Fields' performance here. As much as I think, Bears fans would love to see their team get above 500 over, the Super Bowl champions here, Tampa Bay will win this game pretty easily. And this spread being 12.5 points, I can see Tampa Bay covering here. I know I kind of just spoke against that with the previous two games, but I mean, Tampa Bay, I could picture Tampa Bay blowing out teams more than the Rams because we haven't. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Tampa Bay has had more blowout performances than.
What do you define a blowout?
I'm going to look at the Rams' schedule here.
Because the Rams beat Tampa Bay by 10. I mean, the Rams just blew out New York,
I'd say
think
blowout's like more than like 15 points. So like
so we'll say
so the
14,
Rams
two
blew out
scores.
New York, and they blew out. Well, according to my metric, at 15 points, they blew out New York.
Let's
I
say
don't think
let's say 14. That's two
14.
scores.
Sure. Okay.
But what they've played, I think they've played what they played. Did they not? What was the final score? Week 1. Did they not blow out the Bears?
No, they did not. I think they beat them by 10.
They beat them by 20. They beat them by 20.
Oh, I read that score wrong. So Tampa Bay and LA then have had 2 quote-unquote blowout victories. But something about Tampa Bay playing at home against Chicago, I mean, Justin Fields, you can obviously expect some turnovers on Justin Fields' part, right? I mean, I don't think he goes out of this game without a turnover of some sorts. But I would definitely take Tampa Bay to cover this game because I just don't think Chicago has the potential to even make this a game, really, even though their 3-3 record would say otherwise. But Tampa Bay this will be a blowout win.
Yeah, the Rams will win by more points, so I'm willing to put a little bit of wager on that if you're down. But yeah, I agree.
I think Tampa Bay wins by more points.
All right. Yeah, take the team that lost to the other team by 10 to beat a better team by more points. But yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay. Yep, Tampa Bay is going to win. They're much better. They're playing well. I think this could be a good kind of get-right game for their defense going against the Justin Fields that likes to turn the ball over. But, you know, he's played a few games pretty good. You know, he might be able to, you know, who knows what they scheme up. They might keep it safe, you know, with him. They might try to do a little bit less. But, you know, one other thing is just the Tampa Bay rush defense is really good. Khalil Herbert, I give him some praise. Earlier in the week, he's not going to repeat his performance. Damian Williams, if he is the guy, will not have a great performance. So they're going to have to lean on the pass if they want to try to compete, which I'm assuming they will. But, yeah, I mean, I could see Justin Fields, you know, 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not, you know, who knows how many interceptions, who knows how many pass attempts it takes. But I think they will be throwing a lot.
I'll throw another wager there. I don't think Justin Fields surpasses 200 passing yards.
200? Okay, easy.
Don't think he does it. He's going to have a miserable game.
Yeah, but I mean, you can get 200 passing yards just by, you know, scheming things up, just by taking it easy. I mean, I'll have to see. But if you're playing from behind a bunch, you can get that back. But yeah, I mean, I agree. This will be a fairly handily won game by the Bucks, which, you know, means a lot of garbage time yardage.
And then lastly, for the Sunday games, we have Indianapolis going on the road to play San Fran. This could potentially be closer than I think some people would imagine. I think a lot of people would imagine, you know, San Francisco winning by a touchdown. But something tells me Indianapolis is going to give them, you know, a slight run for their money. Doesn't necessarily mean I'd pick Indianapolis. I'm leaning more towards San Francisco, but I still just don't know who I want to put my cards with. So, I mean, this all depends on who San Fran's going to play at quarterback, because if they're going to play Jimmy G, I would consider this game to be a lot more even. If they're going to play Trey Lance, you know, I would consider the Colts to have an advantage because Trey Lance, although he's entertaining to watch, is just not fully there yet. So, but if they play Jimmy G and then put Trey Lance in for, you know, however many plays or sub out Jimmy G for the rest of the game, I don't know. But like, as far as the Colts go, like the Colts are going to go out there and they're going to play their own football and they're just going to cross their fingers. A lot of this is going to rest on San Fran's hands. So I'll pick the 49ers to win. You know, I'll pick them to cover as well. But I could definitely see an Indianapolis win here just because, you know, San Francisco has just not been quite what we expected before the season started. So I'll pick San Fran to win and cover, but I wouldn't be surprised if Indianapolis won this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think Indianapolis will win this game. This is my weekly confusing line. I mean, making the Niners 4.5-point favorites means that you must not have been paying attention to this season at all. The Niners have lost 3 in a row. Their 2 wins coming against the Lions, who they let almost get back in that game and tie it up, and the Eagles, which was by 6 points and was not convincing at all. And then the Colts, I mean, they blew the Texans out of the water last week. They played close against the Ravens. Week before that, they beat the Dolphins. And, so, I mean, the Colts are playing better football than the Niners right now. I think that continues. I think Jonathan Taylor is finding his stride. The Colts are finding their stride as an offensive team and giving the ball to Jonathan Taylor. And Carson Wentz is actually not playing horribly. He might be figuring, this stuff out. Frank Reich was the quarterback coach when he was had his career year. So, I think maybe he's getting healthy. Maybe he's figuring some stuff out. He hasn't thrown an interception since week 2. That was against the Rams. He's, thrown 2 touchdowns in the past 2 games, including 400 yards against Baltimore. I mean, last week didn't do anything great, but that game was never in question. So not, going to read too much into that. But in his last 2 games, something's actually mattered. He's over 70% passing. I think, I'm going to, retroactively say Carson Wentz, I think, might have a pretty good game here. I don't know what will translate for fantasy because I think Jonathan Taylor might be getting those goal line opportunities. But T.Y. Hilton came back, looked good. I'm still, not convinced on that. But, he's getting more weapons. He's getting stuff figured out. I like the Colts. The Colts I actually picked in the preseason to win the division. It was more of I like their value as compared to the Titans, who I thought might be a little struggling. There's still a long season to go, but the Colts are playing pretty good football right now, and they're on the up. I like them, over San Francisco and definitely on the spread to cover.
I mean, we'll see if this is a part of, the second wind of Indianapolis for the rest of the season to try to contend with Tennessee. But, maybe it's too late to really contend with Tennessee. Who knows? But, I mean, the Colts are in a favorable position here to still make, a little bit of a contest to the AFC South. So,
yeah, I mean, they're only 2 games back. I didn't throw my lock. I'm throwing my lock onto Atlanta over Miami. I think that is a damn near guarantee. So just wanted to put that out there. Not that we even really, put too much into these, but that's my lock.
Fair enough. Carolina's going to take out the Giants.
Don't know if you want. We've got three wagers we made, as well as our season-long Seattle or Carolina more wins one. So if something pops up, I mean, we can add another one. We can roll with the 3. I'll give you, a minute to scroll through. We don't have to. Don't do anything unless you're super confident about them.
I think they just kind of came to me in the moment. I can't really force them.
I mean, usually we've got 3. That's usually what we roll. Just wanted to, see if anything had popped up since then. But if not, do you have any final thoughts?
It's this might be one of the low weeks of the season, definitely with the lineup we have here.
Last week was supposed to be a great week, and it was really pretty boring. So sometimes
maybe the opposite will happen this week, but
not a lot of big matchups, but I mean quite a few close matchups.
Right.
Well, I mean, there's actually 3 double digits, but hope for some close games. Hope for some stuff happening. Some interesting fantasy matchups this week with a lot of buys. And Ryan, me and you are playing in our league, so we'll have to talk about that on Monday. Yeah, but that'll do it for us this week. Remember to check back in with us on Monday to recap the weekend, and then next week again on Thursday we will preview week 8. Bring your fantasy football questions there. You can tweet at me or Ryan with fantasy questions. We'll bring them. We'll answer them on the pod. We can bring them in. But Also follow Dashboards on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, as well as subscribe to the Dashboards YouTube account where you can find the rest of our shows. Along with zone coverage, you can check in on some Pac-12 football, and I believe we might have some NBA content as that season is starting up. So be sure to tune into that, as well as, zone coverage with you next week. But until